Coach Wessman, first and foremost, thank you. Thanks a lot for taking the time off your busy schedule to speak to us tonight. It's certainly highly appreciated. But Coach, like a little bit about you. You started your advanced football career as a quarterback for, I believe, the greatest university known to mankind at USC, where you've played alongside the likes of Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, and Matt Castle. Following your stint as a QB, you became an offensive assistant for Pete Carroll, in which you were part of the national championship winning Trojans in 2003 and 2004. And by the way, Coach, I do have to say that the 2006 Rose Bowl between Texas and USC is probably the greatest college football game ever, I believe, known to mankind. I just had to put it out there. It still stinks a little, but I had to put it out there. You then became a graduate assistant at Clemson at the same time, while Dabo Swinney was the wide receivers coach, which I thought was pretty interesting. Your coaching experience essentially extends through high school football, Division I, Division II college football, and ultimately in the National Football League, where you've worked as an administrative assistant and offensive assistant coach for the Tennessee Titans. And thus, without further ado, Coach, thanks for being here tonight.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you guys for having me. While we're getting started here, first I'm going to put my phone and my email in the chat box for you guys. I'm going to have it in the presentation as well. Bring up this here. All right, guys. So we're going to get into the road to collegiate football. Really glad you guys all came tonight. Everyone plays a role in this, guys. Coaches, players, parents. There's something very important to do for everybody. So we're going to speak to all that. And as we go through this, guys, if you have any questions, definitely stop and let me know. We will have time at the end to answer some, but definitely stop me as we're going through if something pertinent comes up. All right, guys. So what we're going to cover today, I'm going to elaborate on what Coach Maurice just said about my experience and explain to you the different aspects of how it ties into recruiting. Then I'm going to identify the different levels of college football. I'm going to go through how the recruiting process works. And then we're going to get into the fourth section of how to give yourself a chance to get recruited. All right. So that, I was a quarterback at San Clemente High School. Had a lot of interest as a junior. Things didn't go the way I wanted in the recruiting experience. So from there, I went into a junior college, which I'll get more into later. When I was at the junior college level, things went better than I could have imagined. And from there, I got to USC. Once I was done playing, I actually started, before I started as a full-time, coach, I started on the recruiting side of things. And I was kind of the frontline recruiter where I would watch film. Back then it was VHS tapes. Don't want to date myself, but would pop them in and watch a full game. And if I liked the player, I would make a cut up and then present it to the rest of the coaching staff. In that time, we had 3 number 1 recruiting classes in the country. From there, I went to, with Ed Ogeron to Ole Miss, who Ed Ogeron is known as one of the best recruiters in the country. And then from there to Clemson. And, Coach Bowden was the head coach, but Dabo was the receiver coach. And there was a lot of dialogue about recruiting. And I learned a lot about Dabo's philosophies and what he looks for. From there, went to the Titans and was part of 5 combine and draft cycles. And then went up to Minnesota Crookston, where I was passing game coordinator and recruiting coordinator. And that's a Division II school. And we did have the best class in school history. From there to Ravenwood High School, helped several kids get recruited into college. Next up was the Ramstein Royals, which is actually an American high school in Germany. And we went undefeated European champions, but it was tough getting anybody recruited because there are a lot of additional challenges coming from Europe, but they're not insurmountable. And then from there, got to Napa High School, where I'm at now, and, helped several kids get to college. But more importantly, I had a player who wasn't getting recruited become the number 1 player in his position class because he went from not doing anything right to doing all the other things, right. And so we're going to look at his story as well to help examine how you can help really sell yourself and get to that next level. All right, guys. So first thing I want to differentiate, I know in the UK, I don't know about the rest of Europe, but I know there's a difference between college and university. When I talk about college and university in the United States, we really mean the same thing. It's the 4-year advanced degree level. And so when I say college and university, that means the same thing. All right. When we look at governing bodies, there's basically 4 governing bodies. Okay. There's the NCAA, which you all know about, and there's 4 different divisions in the NCAA. There's the NIAI, and then there's 2 junior colleges with the NJCAA and the CCCAA. All right. So I'm going to start from kind of the lowest levels and work our way up to the top as we start to identify these colleges. Okay. So talking about junior colleges. Okay. There's basically 2 of those governing bodies. One is all about California. The other is the rest of the country. Okay. So when we talk about a junior college, it's a 2-year school. You're basically doing all of your pre-major coursework. Okay. So you can get an associate in arts degree, which is that 2-year degree. Okay. Really, you know, what you have here. So in playing college football, you have 5 years to finish 4 years of eligibility. So you have a clock. Once you get to school, you can play for 4 years in games. Okay. That 5th year comes in if you want to redshirt. Okay. And what that means is you're a part of the team. You train with the team, you practice with the team, you just don't play in games. Okay. And that gives you a 5th year to complete your 4 years of eligibility. So if you go to junior college, you have 3 years for 2. Okay. So you have 2 years you can play on the field, but you can redshirt at a junior college level. Okay. There's 66 junior college football programs in the state of California, and there's 65 across the rest of the states. Okay. Now, when you're looking at junior colleges, not all are created equal by any stretch of imagination, both with recruiting, with competitive, with the experience. Some are great. Some are very competitive. You'll have several Division I athletes on the field, several that'll end up playing the NFL, and others are places that the football gods have completely forgotten about, right? So it really just depends, and you really need to understand and know what you're looking at, okay? So when you talk about a junior college, it's very easy to enter, okay? It's very easy to, all you have to do is establish residence, and the schools can help you do that. You can get a student visa. Tuition is cheap, really cheap. A lot of places are $11 to $15 a credit, and a class is 3 credits, you know, long. So it's really cheap. You don't have to have any GPA requirements coming into a junior college. That's the good thing. So what it is if you're late into the recruiting game, we'll talk about timing. But if you're trying to get recruited as a senior, it's going to be very hard to do so. So it can be an opportunity for you if you're just coming in late. For me, myself, you know, I didn't like my opportunities coming out of high school, so I had another opportunity. There are academic barriers with core courses that might be difficult to take in Europe. So it's an opportunity for you to kind of rectify that if that's an issue, or if you're just a non-academic qualifier. So really, that's kind of the opportunity when it comes to that. All right. So that's junior colleges. Go ahead and keep rolling here. So NIAI, okay, that's the next governing body. When we talk about NIAI, this is 4-year colleges. Okay, so you have that 5 for 4. Okay, there's 96 football teams in the NIAI. Okay, how they do scholarships. Okay, they have 24 scholarships. 24 full scholarships of whatever tuition is, okay? But they portion that out however they want, okay? So they're going to first start with your academic help, your need-based help, and they're going to qualify that first, okay? From there, they're going to negotiate with you about what they might offer you, okay? Some places you might get a full, but you definitely need to have good academics, and need-based doesn't hurt either. But really, they're going to portion that out and try to fill a full team, and they're looking to get typically around 80, 85 players, you know, on partial scholarship. Okay. There's really varying levels of this football. There's some NIA programs that are going to be able to beat Division II and Division III programs, and are better programs with more fans, with more money, better facilities. Okay. But then there's some that are really, really the bottom of the barrel. Okay. Now the NIAI has less requirements and is less stringent to get into than NCAA. So you can definitely find that as a potential easier route to play at a nice 4-year school. Okay. But something to keep in mind, in the history of the NIAI, there's only been 12 players ever to make it to play in the NFL. Okay. Walter Payton is the most notable, but 12 players in the history of the NIAI shows it's very difficult to do that. Now, one other option of playing college football is walking on. Not all levels are the same with that. At this level, if you walk on, you're absolutely going to get a chance to compete. And it can be an easier opportunity to walk on because there's less people interested in doing that, okay? Tuition really varies with NIAIs. You have some that are really expensive schools where you're talking $50,000 a semester. Others are $8,000 a year on that, but definitely being in good academic standard. That's important at all levels other than the JUCO. But it definitely will help you. Just to give you an understanding, you're talking about small budgets. You're talking about local games traveling by bus. When I say local, though, some NIAs might be traveling 18 hours by bus, but you're not going to be traveling across the country, to play in these games. We'll talk more about registering, but if you do want to play in the NIAI, you have to have an account and register as a future athlete on NIAI.org. All right. So moving up from there, again, there's 4 NCAA divisions, okay? Division 3, 2, FCS, or 1AA, and then FBS, all right? So getting into Division 3, all right? There's 250 D3 teams, okay? This level offers no football-based scholarships, okay? So it's all need-based and academic financial aid, okay? Now, they do have good packages to help you take out student loans to cover the gap between those things. And they're really good about helping you get that as a football player, but there is no football money. Okay, this is another level where you have local games traveling by bus. Everyone's a walk-on, right? Everyone's walking on at this level. So that is what it is. So you're going to get a great opportunity to walk on and compete at this level. Okay. And as we go up the ladder, it gets harder and harder to both walk on a team and get a fair opportunity, to compete. All right. So at this moment, there's currently 11 players from D3 on NFL rosters. Okay. So you can see that we're already at a much higher level in terms of, players in the NFL. Definitely, if you're looking at this level, you need to make sure that you're looking at an academic opportunity first. And making sure that the school's right and fits with what you're looking for your long-term future. All right. Getting up to Division 2, you got 168 D2 schools. This level has 36 full scholarships, but they're broken up, okay? So whatever that tuition is, they have 36 that full scholarship, and they break it up however they want, okay? So again, it's based on academic and need first, and then there's a level to negotiate with that, okay? This level, you're going to be, local, traveling by bus. And currently, there's 49 players in the NFL from Division II rosters. So you see the numbers are continuing, to increase. There's some fun. You're starting to get more and more schools. At the other levels, there are some schools that have some great tradition, that have some good fans, that have some good stuff, but they could be pretty sparse. Once you're starting to get to D2, you're starting to see some more rivalries, some more cup games, some more things like that are really, really special and fun. So that's definitely something that's neat as it increases. All right, now we're taking a big jump from D2 to the next level, the FCS Division 1 AA level, all right? There's 125 teams in FCS, okay? They have an 85 player limit, but of that 85 players, there is scholarships. They can break that money up however they want, up to 85 players, if that makes sense, okay? So you're gonna have a great chance to get a full scholarship, okay? But if you have academic, money you're bringing in or need-based money, they're gonna lower the amount that they can get and help give more to others. So that's gonna make you more attractive as well, okay? Now, something to take note of, at this level, there's a couple conferences in the FCS that don't offer any scholarships, okay? So it's all about academics. And typically those divisions and those schools are really, really high academic standards. Talking about it might be hard to get into school with a 3.8, okay? But it's just something to take note of. So just know who you're talking to if you're talking to somebody at that level, okay? Now, when you get into FCS, you have 157 players in the NFL, okay? You have national games at the FCS. They do travel by plane. There are FCS teams who occasionally beat FBS schools, okay? So you can get to some pretty good football at this level for sure, and get to some pretty great, great programs with really great facilities and coaching and some great players. All right. From there, we're gonna jump up to the level that you guys see on TV. All right, the FBS level. So there's 130 130 FBS teams. All right. So they have an 85 scholarship limit. At this level, a scholarship is a full scholarship. It pays for all school, all, books, whatever you need with that. It pays for housing. It pays for food, pays for the whole thing. Okay. There's nothing to negotiate. They can't break that up. All right. When you're looking at the numbers, 1,439 out of the 1,696 players in the NFL currently come from the FBS. All right. So obviously it's the hardest to get into, most prestigious to play in. The walk-on opportunities can be very limited. And if you do walk on, you might never have an honest chance to compete for a starting job. However, it is pretty special being at that level because you're, week in, week out, you're, obviously there's the Power 5 and the Group 5, but week in, week out, you're playing in big stadiums, you're flying your opponents, you just got a great atmosphere and something great to compete with. All right. So from there, kind of what does it mean with recruiting and how does this all fit? So FBS is the first domino to fall. Okay. Everyone wants to play FBS. All right. FBS really recruiting really starts your sophomore year. That's when it gets really cranking. Okay. You might get noticed as a freshman. It's possible to get something as a junior or senior, but as you're coming out in, your sophomore year, that's when you really want to get on the map. And I'll show you guys a calendar and we'll go through that in a few more slides of kind of how to do that. But that's when things really get started. Okay. From there, coming out of your junior year is when FCS really starts to fit in because they want the best players that don't go FBS. So they want to first see who's realistically going to go FBS and who isn't. Okay. And then after the FBS slots and after the FCS slots, everyone else kind of comes in more that senior year, right? They might recruit earlier than that, but really they're not going to have a set commit list until they get to their senior year and people realize they're not going to get that FBS scholarship. Okay. And JUCOs kind of fit in at the tail end of recruiting altogether because most people want to get offered, a scholarship somewhere. All right. So with that, just get into some realities of recruiting. Okay. There's 16,000 plus high school football teams in the United States. Okay. So that's 1.6 million high school football players that turn into 11,000 FBS players that turn into the just under 1,700 NFL players. All right. So it is really hard to get noticed and it's hard to separate from the crowd. And a perfect example of that is the player I have who, again, wasn't getting a scholarship offer. No one was recruiting him to being the number one in his class and everyone was recruiting him. He ran a 4.5 the whole time, right? He was the same athlete and the same football player, right? He just wasn't getting any attention or love. Okay. On top of that, there's going to be a lot of challenges coming from Europe. Okay. There's going to be a lot of culture differences, film differences, other things that we're going to have to overcome. Right. And something important to know, guys, doing everything right is not going to guarantee you an offer, but if you do it wrong, you can almost guarantee that an offer is not going to come. All right. But I'm here today to talk to you about how to do those things right because there is hope, guys, and there's a lot of talent over there, and doing things right will get you guys over there. All right. So, all right. So what does the kind of recruiting process look like for the different levels? All right. So junior colleges, they really have no recruiting budgets. They're going to recruit locally. There's no way they're going to recruit internationally. So if you want to go to JUCO, you need to do research on the area, on the levels, and you need to call them and let them know you're interested. And in the past, I've actually worked with Coach Rains, who I saw in here, to help get one of his players over there. And they helped get everything set. And it was a great experience for him. But you have to be proactive if you want to go junior college level. All right. So NAIA D3, D2, they have small budgets. They will potentially come out on the road and recruit. They will call. They will send you mails. They will host official visits, but they don't do that for everybody. So it's really just about the school. Okay. And again, their recruiting really starts after that junior year. Okay. But there's a lot of space going in your senior year that you can fit into those if you want, if things aren't going the way you want, or if you're just late into the party. All right. So FCS has pretty good budgets. They're going to be a lot like FBS. And when we're going to talk about how recruiting works, we're going to focus mainly on FBS. Okay. But again, recruiting typically starts at the end of the junior year once you know that FBS offer is not coming. When it comes to FBS, they have insane budgets. I want to say University of Georgia spent like $3.4 million on recruiting alone. That's just insane money. They're going to be sending you mail, emails, calling you, texting you, visits, hosting official visits, and they're going to be on you often, and you're going to get stuff daily, weekly. It's going to be crazy when those levels recruit you. All right. Moving on here. All right, so here's a recruiting calendar. All right, so this is what it looks like. All right, so I'm just going to take you through what happens in each part of the year. All right, so starting in August is a dead period. When you see the red, that means that there's no in-person contact whatsoever. Okay, you're not allowed to go to them. They're not allowed to come to you. Okay, and the reason it's that way in August is because that's training camp and people are getting ready for the season, so they make it fair for everybody, right? So August is training camp prep season. When we get into September, October, and November, that blue period, so it's still season. They're working in the week to prep for games. They're going to be calling you, doing all that kind of stuff. They'll still call you and text you in August, and you'll still get mailers and things. But in the rest of the blue part, you'll get all that stuff. They'll go out on the road on weekends. They'll watch high school games. They'll do things like that. And they can host you for official or unofficial visits in the season for a game. But you can go to them in the blue period. You can definitely do that in the blue period. And that's not a problem to see them. They can show you around. They can meet with you. They can do all that stuff. If you try to go to see them in a red period, they can't see you. They can tell you where to go and where to look in advance, but they can't have any contact with you in person. Okay. But once we get to that green period, okay, so we'll talk about National Letter of Intent Day, but there's an early signing day just after that first green period ends in December. And then there's another one in February where you actually sign the scholarship offers. Okay. But when you get to that green period, they're allowed to come to you and see you in person and have that direct contact. And they're also going to be hosting official visits. Okay. And doing all that stuff. And then it gets back to that red because they have finals, they have holidays, they have bowl game preparation, all that stuff. And then you get back to another green period right before the second, signing day slot. Now, typically in that first signing day slot in December, typically the recruiting class, the coaches are out on the road recruiting, just making sure the seniors who are committed are going to sign. That's typically who they go visit in that period. And then they sign that first NLI day. Then typically in that later window in January, they're out going to see the juniors and sophomores who are the future classes. That's typically how it works. Okay. Sometimes chaos ensues and they have to recruit differently than they want to. And so they'll do that in January. And sometimes it's too convenient not to get somebody in December who's a future class. So it really just depends. Okay. February, is that another dead period? Okay. When you start getting into March and April, that's when typical spring practice is happening. Okay. So they can have you on campus again. They're not going to be leaving campus, but you can go visit them. Okay. They can host you for spring practice and show you around, do all that kind of great stuff. Then once you get into that April and May periods, they're going to be out on the road, going to spring practices, meeting, high school coaches, doing all that kind of stuff. They can't come to your house, but they can evaluate you in a spring practice and see what you're doing. There's also camps at the schools, which we'll talk about more. And then when you get into June and July, it's just kind of more of the same of that stuff. All right. So breaking down some of the components of it. So an unofficial visit versus an official visit. Unofficial visit, you are paying for yourself to fly to them. You're paying for your food, you're paying for your housing, or your accommodations, all that kind of stuff. And you're setting that up on your own. So there's a lot more windows in which you can do that. Official visits are visits that the college is paying for everything for you. Okay, they're going to pay for everything for you to fly out there, to be accommodated, to eat, all that kind of stuff, everything you need to do to get to and from the airport. You can have a total of 5. Okay, you have to be seriously recruited to be able to have an official visit, but you can have a total of 5. That's why you'll see a lot of players have the top 5 or whatever, because they're basically getting it down to who they're going to go visit. Official visits can be a great, unofficial and official visits are great ways to really interview the school and see if it's a good fit for you. That's really important. You got to find a good fit for you. So definitely visit when you can. and make sure that your official visits are really, your top priorities. If you can do unofficial visits early to focus in on the places you want to go on official visits and have a second trip, I really recommend that. And when you're getting into recruiting, especially at the FBS level, they want to have long-term relationships with you. They want to know you for 3 years. They want to develop that bond and make sure that they're happy with you because you are their future as a coach, right? All right. And then when we get into NLI signing day, like I said, there's 2 signing days. There's an early signing day, which this year is December 16th to 18th. And then February 3rd is the second one. The dates will be similar to that moving forward. But that's just kind of how those work. Now, just a note, I didn't know where to fit this in, but it's important to know there are fake recruiting scams out there, okay? So a couple important things. You don't need to pay anyone money, all right? That's not something you need to do. So if someone's asking you for money, don't give it to them. Something else to keep in mind, all right? These guys do it. They look really official when they come on and they try to scam you. They look like they're with a college. They're going to talk about some of the people at the college. They're going to make you think that they're really at that college, okay? But what'll happen in time, first thing is this. When you're talking to somebody from a school, go online and make sure that they actually work there, okay? Now, there are people in organizations who don't have a lot of billing, and that could be a front line, so don't discredit them at that. But just know this, over time, you're not going to talk to one person. You're going to talk to position coach, coordinator, head coach, recruiting coordinator. You're going to be talking, and then a director of on-campus recruiting. You're going to be talking to multiple people. So if you're in a recruiting process and you've been doing this for a few weeks and you're just talking to one person who you can't find online, it's probably a scam, okay? Just keep that in mind. All right, but just keep alert on that. It does happen every year that there's someone out there trying to scam somebody, so just be aware, all right, guys? With that, hold on, I got to move my bar up top. First steps to making sure that you can move forward to play college football. You have to create an online account, okay? You have to go, if you want to go NCAA, you got to go to their eligibility center, okay? And they have different due dates for transcripts, for, eligibility, for amateurism status, all that kind of stuff, okay? And there's a different bracket for D1 and D2 or D3 or undecided. It costs about $150, okay? But they'll have all the information you need on there. We're going to cover some of that stuff as we keep going here. There's also a separate website for NIAI if you want to go that way. And then if you want to go junior colleges, you really just reach out to the school and they'll get you to register that way. So it's nothing big to deal with. But really, it's never too early to start with that. If you're not registered, you're not going to even get any time of day talking to a college. Okay, it's very important to get registered. All right, so the NCAA's is the eligibilitycenter.org. The NIAA is playmyniai.org. All right, guys. All right, so academic requirements. All right, now it's different for NIAI. It's less stringent, okay, and there really aren't any for JUCO, so just keep that in mind. But there's core courses. All right. Not all high school classes count for those core courses. All right. So the core courses are going to be 16 total, and they're going to be in English, math, natural or physical science, social science, and then they have a different one like a comparative religion or a language or something like that. Okay. The NCAA has all these core courses posted, and what you're going to have to do is work with an academic advisor or a counselor at your school to go look at those core courses and make sure you have things that'll translate, all right? You may need to find an online school or go to a local college or something like that to take additional classes to be eligible, because not everything might translate, okay? And you got to make sure that when you're taking these guys that your grades are not pass or fail, that they're actually going to register a grade, because you have to have a core GPA, which we'll talk about in a minute, okay? It's very complex. So make sure that you're working with someone at your school who can really help you guys. All right. Other things you have to do, you do have to graduate from high school. Like I said, you have to have complete a minimum of the 16 core courses for Division I or Division II. Okay, and you have to have a minimum grade point average, which is based off a sliding scale. I'll show you what that is in a minute. And you have to have a qualifying test score in either the ACT or the SAT. Okay, and then you have to request final amateurism certification from NCAA Eligibility Center. Talk more about that in a little bit. All right, now before I get to the sliding scale, okay, This makes it look like you can either be bad at the ACT, SAT, or bad at the GPA, and it's not a big deal. Okay, but the reality is this. There's a couple aspects where the lower you are on either side of that, the more it's going to hurt you. Number one, if you're in any doubt of potentially being a non-academic qualifier, that's going to be counted against you, and they're going to go with somebody else who's equivalent to you on the field who does academically qualify, because they know they'll have a player who's going to be there and be eligible. Another part of this too, guys, is that these coaches have huge bonuses, probably $250,000, if their students achieve so much in the classroom once you're there. So if you are a poor student and there's a player that's equal to you who's a good student, they're going to go that way, because that's more of a guarantee for them to earn that bonus. So really, even though there's a sliding scale, which is the bare minimum, I really recommend that you try to just dominate that academic side as much as possible, right? And do everything to the best of your ability. So here's what the sliding scale looks like, okay? If you have a 3.5 in those core 16 classes that you need to take, the minimum SAT would be a 400, or the minimum ACT would be a 37, okay? Now, how that changes, right? As the GPA goes down, if your core GPA is a 2.3, now you have to get as high as a 980 on the SAT, or as high as a 75 on the ACT. Okay, so you see how that shoots up. So that's how that sliding scale works, right? And anything below that, in that kind of that peach pink color down there in the bottom, you are academically ineligible, okay? So you definitely want to stay away from that. But again, the higher you do on the test, the higher you do in the classroom, it's better all around. It's better for every level. It's better for your recruiting. It's going to help you get more offers a lot easier. All right, guys. All right, so something else, retaining amateur status and your clock. So we talked about the 5 for 4, okay? If you play any senior ball or you play any college ball, your clock has started, okay? So if you play a year of senior ball, right, then you take a year off, you're 2 years in already, okay? Then if you go to play at a college, you're already in year 3, okay? So you see why it's really important to make sure that you don't take that jump to senior ball or college ball if you want to play college in the States, okay, because that'll start your clock. Another thing is retaining amateur status. So anything that translates to you being paid to play or because you play is going to result in a removal of that amateur status, and you're going to be ineligible, okay? Now, the NCAA is working through allowing college endorsements, so things are changing, but as it stands right now, nothing can happen before you get there. It's got to be once you get there, okay? And if you hire an agent at any time, that instantly removes you from having eligibility in college. So those are just important things to keep in mind, guys, all right? All right, so when we talk about film, okay, and doing what you can to get film, I just want to first say this. I know the film quality and people and technology over there, film is not as good as it could be. But I want you to know, when I was playing, I had to have my mom up in the stands with her camera, and I had to have my dad on a notepad taking stats. So there are things like that over here as well, but you want to make sure you get as best quality film as you possibly can, okay? So when we're talking about film, okay, if you can have someone sit up in the stands and get kind of like that picture on the left where you can get everyone involved in that shot, okay, and get, all 22 guys if possible, or maybe a safety, or two are out, too deep and are out of the picture, that's no problem. But having that shot there is a good angle. If you can afford a second shot like the one on the right where you have what's going on the box, that's really important for linemen, for O linemen, for D linemen, and maybe you can even have a little bit of both film. For running backs, that's a great one, for linebackers as well. And when you're making your highlight films, you want to be able to use the tools on Huddle or whatever service you have to highlight yourself like that player is, to make sure that you're making it as easy as possible for the coaches to watch you and help to understand who you are without them having to do the work of finding you. All right. So do the best you can with film, get the best quality film you can, have a buddy, a friend, a parent, whomever you need to do what they got to do to help you get that good film. Okay. There's other things you can do to help supplement it. You got to have that game film first. Okay. But you can have some up close stuff of one-on-ones, or if you're a quarterback, of dropping and throwing, or working on technique to help show that. You can also film 40-yard dashes, things like that up close. But that's more supplemental stuff that's going to help you pull away from the pack, not start to get noticed. All right. But those two shots that you see on screen, if you are filming, that's what you want to shoot for. All right. So creating a highlight film. First thing I want to tell you about, guys, I'm not feeling sorry for coaches at the college level. But just so you're aware, they work 7 days a week. They work 18, 20-hour days. They typically have about 2 weekends off. That's kind of the college game with how the whole year works. Point being, they're very busy. Okay, on a daily basis, they're getting 100 to 300 emails of people sending film in. Okay, so you have a very limited window, okay, of opportunity. Okay, you probably have to send in your video many times for them to watch it once. They might start with one play, not like what they see, and toss it on. Okay, so it's very important that you start the right way when you're putting your highlight film together. Okay, again, you want to have great quality film, and you want to make sure that you're editing your film as much as possible. Okay, you don't want to have the break in the huddle and watching everybody walk up to the line of scrimmage and this long cadence. Like, narrow it down to right before the play starts. Focus on yourself so they can see who you are. Okay, let the play run. Now, if you just have a long 68-yard touchdown run, that's awesome. Okay, they don't want to see you toss the ball to the ref and then run all the way 50 yards back to your coach to chest bump them and do it. That's great stuff, but they don't want to see that, right? So cut that. Once you score that touchdown, cut that part out as well. Okay, make sure that it's really trimmed as much as possible. Okay, and we want to start off the right way. All right, we want to show off your athleticism, your technique, and skill at your positions, your specific position. So what do I mean? Okay, if you're a quarterback and you're scrambling around the pocket and you throw the ball up in the air and there's a pile of 7 guys around and your receiver comes down with it. Well, listen, that's great. But if you're leading with that, you're probably going to lose faith in people, right? All right, so that's something to have either not on there or at the very end. Okay, yeah, it's a great play to watch. It's fun to watch. Okay, but that's not going to get people going. Your first few plays have to get them to want to watch a couple more. Okay, then those couple more want to keep that train going, right? And then your highlight film wants to get them to watch full game film. They're going to watch full game film if they like that, all right? If they see you on film loafing, not being very productive, not doing those things, they're going to be done with you, okay? Some other things to think about too, if you're a quarterback and the first 15 plays you have on there are runs without a single throw, that's probably not a good mix. Okay, that might worry some guys. So mix it up. It's good to run as a quarterback, but you got to have some of both, right? And I understand as a DB, you might not have a ton of film if you're a great corner because they might be going the other way. You got to do what you have to have what you have at your disposal, right? But start fast, stay strong with those things that highlight your specific position group. Great technique and great athleticism, and then keep it going. Now, when you're making this, guys, too, just again, make sure you're not wasting time on that film. The more info you can get in the shorter time, the more they're going to love you. Okay, include some screenshots with some stats, stats that sell you, with information about yourself, your height, your weight, your 40 time, whatever, your GPA, anything else that sells you. Okay, you can have that at the start, a little bit at the start, a little in the middle, a little at the end. You can mix it up. And then make sure you have your contact info. And when I say contact info, I mean your phone numbers, your emails, your coach's contact information, because they play an important role. All your Twitter handles and feeds and Instagrams and any social media that you use, have all that stuff in there. All right, guys. And this is an opportunity to sell yourself and just keep getting them to be more and more interested in you, right? That's the whole point of it. All right. From there, understanding social media, guys. All right. So a couple of things that I think are important anyway, right? Are do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and leave a place better than you find it. Okay. I think those are important things no matter what you're doing in life, and it's the right way to kind of be blessed and be a blessing, right? But getting to that and taking that a step further, guys, recruiters are going to deeply search your social media. Okay. Deeply search it. They're not just going to look at you. They're going to look at your friends. Okay. If there's anything on there that is questionable, okay, they might move on from you. Okay. So just really be mindful of every post you put. Be mindful of your friends' posts, okay? Even if you don't do drugs, but you have 5 friends who do drugs and they're posting about it, that could deter someone from recruiting you, okay? So just keep in mind everything that's going on in there. And also keep in mind, there's cultural differences between where you guys are and where you're trying to be. So just really be thoughtful with your posts, because you could put something that where you are is perfectly harmless, but it translates into something that might be offensive or not sound great, right? So just really be mindful of everything you do on social media. But if you're always looking to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do and leave a place better than you find it, you'll have nothing to worry about, all right? But take that seriously, because they're gonna, all right? And that trickles really, that trickles into anything, any form of anything that they can observe you and critique you, they're gonna. All right, really important part to recruiting, guys, okay, is get accurate data. What I mean by that on you is your height, your weight, 40-yard dash, okay, your pro agility, which is the 5, 10, 5, okay, the L drill, your vertical jump, your standing broad jump, okay, your wingspan, your hand measurements, okay, and what you can do bench press, squat, and power clean, okay. You got to have those numbers. Now, when you're in the off-season training, you want to work on these, okay? At least one of these components daily, okay? Try to get these components at least twice a week, okay? It's important because you can run a 4.840 right now, but really what you run if you had a good start and a good finish is a 4.4. That could be the difference between you getting a scholarship offer and you not, okay? So every little thing matters, and so much can come from it. All right. So work on this stuff in the off season as much as you can. All right. Along with your football work, because that part's really important as well. Something else, and convert it to imperial measures. All right. Just like I told you about these coaches being busy. All right. If they get something that says CMs and KGs, they're going to look at it and go, and they're going to toss it up in the air and move on. All right. They're not going to take time to convert centimeters into feet and inches or kgs into pounds. All right. So really make sure you're doing that work for them and getting that information out. With this, guys, make sure that everything you do is accurate. And I'm going to be honest with you, they're not going to believe you. If you say you're 6 foot, they're going to think you're 5'10", okay? And that's okay. It's part of the process. But they're not going to believe any of the stuff you say. But that's fine, all right? But make sure that you're being honest and forthright, okay? Because what ends up happening, there's states that have bad reputations in recruiting, whether it's guys committing and decommitting, or committing somewhere and then changing their plan last minute, or lying about their height and their weight, whatever, right? So they get these bad stigmas and they get recruited less, okay? So just keep that stuff in mind and be honest, all right? With that, Coach Rick and I have talked about, a combine in Europe. Right now, there's none that I know of that are good solutions to do what you need to have accomplished, okay? What you need to have accomplished is accurate, getting that data that we talked about, but being able to get that information into the hands of colleges that they're going to find it to be credible and reliable, okay? So hopefully someday in the future we can provide that solution, okay? But at the moment there isn't one. Now, there are regional combines in the United States that colleges will look at, okay? They're gonna flip through the data to see who stands out, okay? And so, there's Nike ones. Perfect example is my player, okay? My guy ran a 4.5, okay? He always ran a 4.5. He was always a fantastic football player, okay? As a sophomore, before I got to work with him, I think he had about 400 yards, okay? Again, wasn't getting recruited. Nobody knew he ran a 4.5, okay? So we sent him to the Open in Northern California, which is one of those combines that everybody takes a look at, okay? And he ran a 4.5 in the slow lane, okay? So he can run a 4.4 a lot of places, and we've actually clocked him at that, but he ran a 4.5 there, okay? So when that happened, everybody wanted to figure out who this kid was and what he was about, okay? He didn't have the most impressive game film, but because he posted that, right, they were interested. So I got a few phone calls, okay? I started talking to some coaches, okay? The word started getting out there. Once that got out there, I was able to start calling more of my friends and start spreading more of the word, saying, hey, did you hear this guy, right? He's got this, and spreading the word. He ran a 4.5 at this, and he's a football player. And, oh, by the way, he's got a 4.0 GPA. And, oh, by the way, he's a hard worker, great kid, blah, blah, blah. He was able to sell him. And so the recruited starting, picking up, okay? So that combine instance for him was a great way to go to one event and have a lot of visibility, okay? So if you are somebody who has really good stats, really good data, And at these combines, you do all those competitions, and then you have a period in time where you're actually doing position specific stuff. Okay, so you get to show that off as well. But keep in mind, guys, if you run a 4.5, it's great for you. If you run a 5.5, it's going to pretty much kill your recruiting, right? So just understand that you got to have the good data for the combine to be a way to get noticed. Now, again, if we're talking D3 or NAIA, your speeds aren't as important. Okay, your height and weight aren't as important. There's good football players who are great football players that just don't quite have that, that speed or the size to play at the highest levels that fit well. Okay, and if you're going to go to a combine, okay, it's about preparation. You need to work at this for years, okay? And you need to really prepare for it, okay? You got to be methodical at it, and you have to be able to do this stuff flawlessly, okay? So that's a big, big component. And like I said, typically in the U.S., that preparation for combine to gather all that data, it's really all about the off season, okay? Once that season's done, you take a couple weeks off and then you hit it. You do that stuff weekly and you work to improve it. So you do some speed drills and you work on change of direction and you work on being more explosive in the weight room and you work on those core lifts and auxiliary lifts to help extend your lifting in those core lifts. All right, guys. So you can check out the different regional combines with their data and who's gone to them, the big players who have, and that stuff gets posted. But that's definitely something to keep in mind. Obviously, it's cost prohibitive because you got to come to the U.S., but it could be a great tool. Okay. One way to get in, and really, I recommend doing as much of these things as you can. Okay, is sending an introductory email and following up with a phone call. Okay, so sending an introductory email. Okay. I look at sending these to the head coach, the offensive or defensive coordinator, your position coach, recruiting coordinator, and director of on-campus recruiting. And I recommend covering that with a blanket because, like I said, when I was recruiting coordinator, guys, I think one day I had like 650 emails from recruits in one day. It wasn't normally that bad, but you can be flooded to where you just don't have time. And when that's happening, you're in the middle of the season trying to game plan and prep and have practice. So it just, by the nature of it, there's going to be periods of time where, they just don't get it. So send it to everybody. You got to send it often, figure out whatever schedule is right for you in terms of how often you want to send it to those schools and how you can find them, guys. If you go to the school websites, you're going to be able to look and find athletic departments and find directories where you can get their emails. Sometimes, people have different titles. So if you're not sure, you can make a decision if you want to throw it in and try to email them or not. A lot of times head coaches won't have their email on there, but they'll have an administrative assistant or secretary who helps them, whose email will be on there. And that's a great way to get them out. And then in time, after you've sent several emails, start to follow up with a call just to get through and to hear yourself that you've been evaluated. That's what you want, right? That they know who you are, they've seen your data, and you've been evaluated. Okay. Typically, the evaluation process works. You get your video into the preliminary person's, screening. And if they like you, it goes to the next level, which could be position, it could be the entire staff. It could be a position coach. It could be a unit, offense, defense, or special teams, right? They'll watch you. And then from there, you'll kind of just continue to work your way up the board and continue to go through, the higher levels of the recruiting process. When you're writing this email, okay, you want to let them know who you are, where you're from. You want to show that you are confident in your abilities, but also that you're humble and that you're ready to come and work hard. Okay. If you're not confident, they're going to be pretty hesitant on you. But if you're not humble, ready to work, they probably won't waste their time either. Okay. So those are very important. If you're just sending it out blanket to see who's interested, fine. But if there's a reason why you really school, like a code, scheme that they run, make sure that you're putting that information in that email. Okay. Make sure that you're also including your NCAA registration, your highlight film, your academic transcripts, your personal data, along with your contact info. And I understand that you might not have all of this at a time. You may be, updating your highlight film continually. And honestly, guys, as you're getting into your further, in your high school career, you definitely want to update that highlight film often. Okay. But include all that stuff. Be really thorough. Be really professional when you get that stuff out. All right. Another way, okay, we talked about there's summer camps, okay? So every college, now obviously with COVID right now, they're not going on at the moment. Most of them were canceled last year. I think there's a decent possibility there'll be some this year. But there's summer camps at individual colleges, okay? All of these schools run them. All of the FBS schools run them. Most FCS schools run them. A few of the lower levels have these summer camps, okay? And what it is, it's an opportunity. They're going to have a 2 or 3 day camp. Sometimes they have day camps, okay? They have you come stay in their dorm rooms. They feed you. You sit in the meeting rooms. You are with their coaching staff. You're on their practice field. You're having 2 practices a day. So it's really a couple things. One, it's a great experience to be coached by some great coaches and have a fantastic college experience. It's an opportunity to better your game. But really the most important part of why I have it in here for this recruiting piece is it's a great way to get noticed, okay? If someone's not sure about you, they're going to ask you to come, okay? I helped my player get to a couple camps because it helped him get further evaluated coming out of that sophomore year, right? Because they start to solidify their boards, and we'll talk about a recruiting board down the road, but they start to solidify those boards, and you need to get on it early enough, right? But it's a great way for you, whether you're a big-time recruit and you're between 3 or 4 schools, going to their camps is a huge opportunity if you can afford it to interview them and see what life is like on that campus, in those meeting rooms, eating the food, breathing it, just really being that football player there. So that's a great opportunity. But it's a great way to get noticed because you're working with the coaches day in and day out. They get to see how you are in the classroom. They get to know who you are as a person, and they're working with you out on the field, right? They're seeing how you can adjust to what you're doing. The downside to this, guys, is that there's a small window in which those camps are happening, okay? And you're not going to be able to do all at once, and obviously it's cost prohibitive. You can potentially do 1-day camps and string a couple of these together, come to the States for a week or 2 and go to 2 or 3 different camps, maybe 4 or 5. It's possible. You'll be pretty worn out if you're doing that many because they are 2 a day, and you have to keep that in mind. But they are great opportunities to get in and really, really get noticed, okay? But again, you could come to Clemson's camp. You could be the first one not to get a scholarship offer. And even though they notice and like you, it doesn't help you get a scholarship. So just keep that in mind, all right? There are recruiting companies out there. There's third-party recruiting companies out there, okay? Now, they're certainly not necessary, okay? I'm giving you all the information now, and you can do all the work on your own to do this. But there are recruiting companies out there who can, help you with some of this stuff. It's never going to hurt you to use these people, but don't feel like you have to, okay? Definitely don't think so. And if they're making you false promises about, they're definitely going to get you recruited and they're going to do this and they're going to do that, I don't know about all that, okay? Typically what those companies do is they evaluate you. They have a level that they think you belong, and that's where they're going to be sending your information. Some of them will negotiate with you about where you want to send this stuff out. But typically, they basically are going to put together a package of everything we're talking about and help, send it out. There are companies who will help you train. I don't know if it's true in the UK, but in the United States, there are companies who will help you train for the combines and do those things. But even if you choose to go this route and hire one of these companies, I would not rely on these services alone. I would make sure that you guys are doing these things. You guys are sending your information out. You guys are following up with calls. You guys are really driving your recruiting, okay? There's a big difference between a coach getting an email or a call from a recruiting company versus hearing from a kid that they're going to want to recruit, okay? They're going to be a lot more impressed with it coming from the actual kid, all right? All right, so getting into a recruiting board, all right? So this is pretty important to understand the philosophy here. When I have this, guys, keep in mind, every school has a different version, a different way of how they talk about this, of how they organize it, okay? So I have this into 3 different tiers with a color scheme, okay? Every school is different, but they all in philosophy do the exact same thing. It's really important, okay, when you're getting recruited. It's more important at the FBS and FCS level. It's less important at the lower levels because they don't necessarily have these huge boards like this. They will to a degree, but not anything close to the same, okay? Because they're gonna be much smaller, much more focused on what's going on. But you need to ask where you are at on their board, okay? More than likely, the first time, these recruiters, guys, they're smooth, okay? They're going to tell you they love you. They're going to tell you they can't wait to see you in their uniform and all these other things. And those things might be true, but that doesn't mean they have any intent of offering you a scholarship, okay? So you really need to know where you're at on the board. More than likely, when you first ask where you're at on the board, they're going to give you a response, something like, oh, you're pretty high up there. We really like you, okay? Don't accept that, okay? Ask what their board is and how it actually functions. Because here's why, okay? So this is an example that I've created, and it's basically at a school that wants 2 running backs, okay? So you see the first tier, the green tier, okay? You see on the right, they've offered all 3 of those kids, okay? So here's how this works. They only have 2 spots available, but they've offered 3 kids, okay? So what are they telling these kids, okay? They'll tell Joe, oh, you're number 1 on the board, but we've offered 3 and we're taking the first 2 who accept, okay? So if 2 of those 3 accept, they're done recruiting, okay? They're done recruiting, all right? They're not going to get to that second tier and offer David, Daniel, or Mr. Martin there. They're not going to offer one of those guys unless 2 of the first 3 have gone somewhere else, okay, or are dead. If one of them becomes academically ineligible and another one goes somewhere else and those 2 are out, then they'll start getting to that second tier. Okay. Now you see they're totally invested on the first tier. They've offered and they're working on visits. Okay. The second tier, they have official visits in, right? And they've brought those guys in, but they haven't yet offered. Okay. That next tier, you see they haven't brought them in for a visit. Now they're calling those guys, they're texting them, they're telling how much they love them. They're sending them emails, they're sending them mails, they're talking them up all the time. Those guys are getting fully recruited, but those guys really are a safety net. Okay. They're a safety net if everything else falls through. Okay. So once they moved on, right, they get to tier 2. If you get to tier 3, they may or may not still take 2 running backs, right? Because if they can get a tier 1 a quarterback or tight end, they might do that instead, right? Rather than 2 running backs. They might say, well, we didn't get any tier 1 or tier 2 running backs. So Jeff Allen will come. We'll take him to be, safe with numbers. We'll save that spot for the next year, right? And we'll take that to go get, 3 of 3 in the tight end room or something like that, right? So you need to know where you're at on the board, because you might sit here getting all these calls, getting all these emails, getting all this love and attention from USC, which is where you want to go, but you're really not going to get an opportunity. And Notre Dame is sitting here with, you're a tier 1 Notre Dame or a tier 2. You've got an opportunity there, and you're stalling for that tier, the SC. And Notre Dame doesn't pan out because you waited too long, right? So that's just something to know. You've got to know where you're at on the board. You've got to know how their board works, okay? You just got to be cognizant of those things while you're making your decisions. Really important component, all right? From here, guys, things to know about the evaluation process. It is fluid and it's evolving, okay? Everything matters, okay? So everything you do, it's always changing and it's always dynamic, okay? And coaches change, all right? You might be in a process where you really love this one school and, the signing day is coming up, you're committed, and the coaching staff is let go before you get to that point. The new coaching staff may or may not. Usually they keep anyone who's committed, but sometimes they don't, okay? So just know they're constantly evaluating you, and it's fluid and changing, and where you're at on the board might change. As they start to see you in your next season, you might really rise in the board, okay? So you got to just see how it goes, okay? Second thing, there's a domino effect, okay? It happened this year with my tight end, okay? Everybody wanted to go, all the tight ends, the best tight ends in the country, all wanted to go to Clemson, okay? So they were waiting to see who was going to get that offer. Now, Clemson, knowing that, okay, hadn't offered anybody. They were taking their time in the evaluation process and being really thorough, really stringing things out to really get to know people. So all of the best tight ends are sitting here waiting to see what Clemson's going to do. Finally, Clemson decides, this is the guy we want. They offer him. They give him a few days, okay? He takes it. So now that he's committed there, okay, the 2, the 3, the 4, well, excuse me, they didn't want my tight end, and they wanted a different one, even though my tight end was the number 1 in the class, okay? They went with a different guy, more of my guy was more of a wide receiving, tight end. They went with a bigger blocker. And And so going that route, everything else started to fall. Okay. So then, all these other schools started getting their pick, right? And then that kind of boards were getting narrower. Other people were getting offers, right? So that domino effect, schools get taken up, offers get taken up, more offers get made, right? So it's all about when's that first domino piece for the position group going to fall, and everything else trickles afterward. A great way to see how you guys compare is to look at Rivals or 247 website. Okay. You can look at historical data for this year, for previous years, for players, for their heights, their weights, their 40s, their pro agilities. You can see how you compare to, sometimes they have bench presses, other things like that. And you can see how you compare against the best of the best, and then others who got recruited, and really this recruiting thing is a crazy thing. I don't know if you guys know the name Patrick Willis. He was a linebacker at Ole Miss when I was there, and he played for the 49ers. And he's a stud. Okay. He's a stud. He was a 1-star recruit. It's absurd. Okay. There's a lot of hype and things that aren't realistic or aren't fair that happen in the recruiting process. Okay. But just see how you stack up. Okay. Every year the draft happens, the NFL draft happens. There's guys who get drafted from FCS schools. Okay. Schools that aren't that big Division I, because the recruiting process didn't go, the right way, the fair way, whatever. Right. Okay. Take your time to make the right decision. Okay. Be thorough, do your homework, make sure it's a good fit for you academically, with the coaches, with the scheme, with the area. Really make sure you're comfortable with everything you do. But when you are ready, commit. Okay. Because like I showed you in that example, they're going to offer, three guys for 2 spots. Okay. So you want to make sure that you're not just dragging out that process for no reason. Okay. Visit in person as much as you can, evaluate them. Okay. Like we talked about. Okay. Make sure you're making a wise decision. When it comes to committing, all right, this is very important, guys. Don't commit if you're not fully committed. Okay. Once you commit, be committed. Okay. Once you commit, when it really depends on who you're working with as a coach too. And you should have open dialogue with those coaches about where you're at, about where they're at, the whole thing. Have open dialogue and have it often. The more you guys communicate, the more you over communicate, the more both sides are protected. Okay. The way Dabo Swinney at Clemson wants it, he looks at it as a marriage. And once you're committed, he says you're done being recruited. You don't ever go see a place, you're done. Pete Carroll was different. He said, listen, when you're committed and you're coming here. But if someone else wants you to go visit them and that's a place you want to go see it, go have fun. Because you're going to go see it and you're going to know that we're better, right? And so there's different philosophies with different people, but definitely listen to other coaches. If you're committed somewhere, listen to what they say, listen to opportunities, because things can happen. I'm not telling you to, go crazy with recruiting, but say, hey, like my guy was getting overwhelmed with recruiting. Okay. But when he started to eliminate people, we made it very clear. Listen, it's a fluid dynamic process. We may come back and talk to you again, but at this moment, it doesn't look like I'm going there. But, if that changes, I'll get back in touch with you. And there was people like Oregon State, for instance, who offered and said, listen, I will find a scholarship for you if you want to come back to us. If something happens, we'll be there for you, and they would. So it's just good to know. But really, once you make that commitment, guys, honor that thing. It's important. All right. One opportunity to get in is coming to the U.S. and playing high school football in America. Now, it's a pretty tricky and difficult way of doing it. You need to first know that not all high schools are equal. Some high schools you will not have any chance of making it. Some you'll have decent chances. But if you do come, you really need to make sure that you're going to come long enough to really make it worth it. Coming your senior year and arriving a couple weeks before the start of the season, you're going to have a tough time if it's a good school breaking into a starting lineup, let alone getting recruited. So if you're going to come, really try to be out here 3-4 years. Make sure that the school is going to have the exposure and a scheme to fit you as an athlete. Okay. And there's some things to understand. There's 50 different states with 50 different rules to playing high school football. Okay. If you showed up in the state of California and said you moved to California to play high school football, they would tell you that's nice. You can go to school, but you can't play. You're not eligible to play football. Okay. Why? I don't know. Now, if you went to a private school in California and you paid them to go to that school, you would be a student, you'd be enrolled, and you're good to go. No problem. Okay. Georgia has a small tuition that you got to pay if you want to play. States have different rules, but basically the bottom line is you have to establish residence, okay, which you can either do by one of your family members moving into the area. And if you do that, there's a very specific area. It's not just, if you want to go to the town of Napa, it's not just Napa, right? There's a map inside of Napa that sends you to this high school versus that high school. So you'd have to establish residence in that area. And if you do that, then you're able to play or potentially move in with family. There are ways to do it via foreign exchange programs. I don't know if we would able to string that together to play at the same high school multiple years, but it's possible. And then you may have visa issues trying to do that. But it's definitely an option to try to help you get at the next level. But again, just because you play high school football in America doesn't mean anything. What that's going to do for you is it's going to help these colleges bridge the gap that is a challenge in Europe, but you still need to do all the things we're talking about. You still need to take care of academics. You still need to put together highlight films, get that data, and get that information out. All right, guys. And when we talk about this stuff, guys, there's no one size fit all in this recruiting process. So you just got to kind of enjoy the journey and do these guidelines to the best of your ability. Control what you can control. Forget about the rest. I think there's additional challenges to just to being in Europe. Coaches are going to question the level of play. They're going to question, cultural differences, all these other kind of things. And we got to bridge that gap. And, it's definitely a process. And just so you guys understand too, just to reiterate that story about the tight end and kind of put that whole thing together. So, he wasn't getting recruited. We got him ready for that open. He trained really hard at that open. He did a great job at that open. People took notice of him. Then the next step was me as the coach. Okay. I was talking about him. I was selling him. He was dominating the classroom. Again, a perfect student. Okay. Dominating the classroom. He was working his tail off, being a man of good character, because that's all important. All that stuff's important. Okay. Then I did my part as a coach, and I got his name out there. I spoke the truth about him, which was an important thing to do because it's important for my credibility. But I had nothing but good things to say about him. I worked hard to call other coaches, right, and help him get those emails out and his highlight film. And some of you guys understand too, once they learn about you, these guys have access. They have access to Huddle accounts. So they can come in these colleges and just watch you on Huddle, right? And see what you're about, okay? So they were doing that, and we were working that part and building the hype. And then when we got to the season, we really catered our offense to getting him the football, making sure that no matter what you did defensively, we were going to get the football into this guy's hands and let him do what he does best, okay? So receiving wise, I want to say he had, 1,300 yards. Rushing wise, I want to say he had 650 yards. Special teams, he had a kickoff return for touchdown for, 60 something yards, right? And so putting that all together, it helped him, us as the coach, helped, sell what he does best. And we were able to put that on film. And in doing that and showing off what his natural skill set is, he just exploded in that super recruit. And he really did get offers from everywhere but Clemson. And so he's now committed to Georgia. But it's such a great example of this amazing talent who's sitting right there, right? Didn't do things right to now does it, and then boom. So it really does make a difference. So with that, this is my contact information again. I definitely want to help you guys on your journey. And what questions do you guys have?
Thank you, Coach. Much appreciated. Coach Franco, you got a question, sir? You're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Coach. Once again, thank you very much for, for all the information. I have a question about the scholarships that you put in there, the numbers. Those numbers are like general numbers, I'm going to assume, but not necessarily apply to international players applying for scholarships, correct? What's your view on that?
Okay, so when you're talking about, so international players, if you're looking at like a D2 or a D3 or anything like that, there's a big advantage for an international student because there is money available for, for international, specifically for international students. So for you guys, if you're dominating the classroom, you're going to get academic help. If you have any need base, plus you can get extra, financial aid for that, you're going to make it to where you might be at a full ride or you can be really close. Those numbers, for the lower levels, not all, the school I was at, we didn't have the full allotment that you could have, okay? But anything you can get outside of that football money for the lower levels is only going to help you. It's only going to make you more appealing. It's only going to make you easier to make that bridge. When you get to the FBS level, it doesn't matter. You're either full scholarship or you're not. So if you're looking at walking on, that international money can help you, but rule-wise, they can't help you get any of that money at that high level. If you're talking D3 or D2, they can help make sure that you get qualified for that because that's part of their compensation package. But at the FBS, they're two completely different things. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it does in a sense because I think part of the understanding is that most of these scholarships are primarily, actually I should say prioritized for American U.S. Citizen students most of the time. And we're talking about the football scholarships rather than the academic. Okay. So that was partially why I asked the question.
The football ones, they're going to do a good job, no matter what level you're at, of evaluating talent to make sure they're getting the right people. But they're going to give money to the people that they believe are the best fits that can help the football program. It's not designated for international versus national, but you have to understand the way the system works. They don't even really know that there's football. Most coaches don't know there's football being played overseas. They have no idea. So we have to kind of bridge that gap, and we have to help them make sure that they're comfortable with the recruits and what's going on. And if we do that, I'm getting a call from France, so clearly that's somebody from this. Thank you, but I'll call you back after. So that money is we have to just bridge that gap for their concern for not giving it to someone in the UK. But no, if they're, I've been trying to help a young quarterback in the UK right now make the jump over, and they're more than happy to evaluate the kid. Now, they question the evaluation process to someone over there right now, and we have to bridge the gap and make people feel more comfortable, but it's not unheard of. We just got to have everything right and make sure we're giving them accurate and good information, if that makes sense, and make sure that they can see that these people are worthy more than someone in the United States. Does that make sense?
I appreciate it, Coach. Thank you. Yep. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Luke, you had a question. You want to ask a question? Good. Luke. So basically, Luke was asking what in terms of academic qualification, what that would translate to British grades and qualifications. So this might be a question that perhaps some of the UK coaches might be able to answer. So in other words, what would a 3.5 GPA be in terms of an A-level qualification?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not versed enough in the academic system in the UK or in Europe. And then it's not just what that GPA is, it's what that GPA is in the core classes. So you may be a great student in the UK, but not taking those core classes. So that's something that, I'd be happy to work with someone from my side to try to help navigate that. But yeah, I don't have an answer for that, unfortunately.
Cool. Thanks a lot. And then Will's Noon, he asked, how did the ACT and SAT change due to coronavirus?
Last year, for anyone coming out last year, there was a waiver that went in place that basically said you didn't have to take it. They've started offering it again. They haven't said what's going to happen for students next year. If you're a senior right now going into college, you technically don't have to have it. Okay. They haven't said what they're going to do for next year. I've heard talk that colleges might move away from those tests anyway, but at the moment, my recommendation is to absolutely prepare for those tests, one or the other. You don't have to take both. You can, because some people find one easier than the other, but definitely prepare for it at this moment because we don't know what the future holds.
Thank you very much. And Mommy, you got a question.
Yeah, hello. How does it benefit or hurt you to play multiple positions or try to get recruited in multiple positions? Is it better to focus on one position, or let's for instance, I'm playing linebacker and running back. Is it better to focus on one or play both?
Yeah, so great question. So a great example is my tight end. He for us he's on offense he's a tight end, he's a running back, he's a wide receiver. On defense he's a defensive lineman, he's an outside linebacker, right? He does everything. Okay. Um, he got recruited from like Notre Dame. When they recruited him, they said you could play offense or defense. Okay. There was one other school that when they recruited him was recruiting him only for defense. Everyone else was recruiting him for tight end. More than likely you're going to be better, more suited for one thing, or if you're not, you're going to have a passion for more one or the other. In the US, you're not going to play both positions in college. It really doesn't happen very rarely. And if it does, you're going to play one primary position, a couple snaps somewhere else. So the recruiting process is really going to be about one position, but showing that you play multiple positions and selling yourself in your highlight video playing multiple positions is never a bad thing. It's going to show that you're a good athlete. It's going to show that your program really values you and that you're an important part of it. So when you ask that question, is there a position that you like more or that you're better at?
I'm better at linebacker, but I prefer playing running back.
Well, I mean, that's a decision you'll have to make, whether you want to, try to sell yourself at linebacker if you're better at it, or play what you love in college. And,
well, I get more snaps at linebacker. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would make those positions are very compatible. I would have a highlight film that has a lot of highlights of both and put your stats of both.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Fabian Burkholz, you're up, sir.
Yes, hello, coach. Just a question from the coaching side, because our task is to better the knowledge from all the players. And what advice could you give to a coach how I could get over for like a spring camp to get that collegiate feeling, to take that over and could carry that into my players so that I could help them if they want to take that next step?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So similarly to the players camps that happen, there are coaching camps at pretty much every college where basically, some do it differently, but usually what it is, it's one day, and what you're going to have is you're going to have an opportunity to watch a practice, and then they're going to have a meeting where the head coach talks and you learn about his philosophy, and then you get into breakout rooms where you can go, listen, sit in, watch some film with the coach, talk through some scheme, do that kind of stuff. So those programs have that, and that's something where all you have to do is pay the registration fee and get yourself over there to do. So that is an option. In terms of doing something that's of more value, in terms of, showing up and actually sitting in meetings and doing it for several days to really increase your value. Every time I take my staff to do that, we've gone all over the country to do that, because it is so valuable. And, honestly, the game of football evolves.
Right.
And, when I'm coaching at the high school, it evolves a year or two later in high school than what's happening at the higher levels. So we'll go visit someone and we'll spend 3-4 days with them doing that. So it's a great idea to do. Really, the only way to do it is to build a relationship, and have a relationship where you can call in and do it. It's really hard to do. I'm thinking about the ideas in my head about it'd be great if we could kind of develop some kind of,
Exchange program.
Yeah, to kind of help facilitate that. But yeah, it's tough. I'd be happy to, next time I go, have you come join us if that works for you. But it's tough. But let me keep thinking on that and talk with Coach Rick and everyone and see if we can come up with something.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Wills Noon, you're up. Mr. Coach Noon. I mean, you really want me to read your question? All right. Coach, are there ways you can get colleges to pay for your camp for their camps? And if does admittance to a private high school in the States mean that you could potentially lose your eligibility to an NCAA program?
Okay, so what colleges will do for big time recruits, they can't pay for you to come to a camp, but what they can do is they can prorate your camp. Okay, so usually when you go to camp, it's a couple $100. You get a t-shirt, you get meals, you get the housing. They can prorate a camp and just have you come to one practice, right? And the value that they put on the camp, they overcharge you for the food and the dorm and the t-shirt so much that what they charge you for the one practice is probably like $5. Okay, they do that on purpose. That way they can make sure that their big time recruits can come to their camp for one practice, get that prorated value, and they can get them out of there. Okay, but they can't legally pay for you to go. Okay, and you would have to fly to the camp and stuff yourself. They can come to fly out to see you, and in doing that, they might be able to facilitate a workout. And I'm just going to be honest with you, legally they can't facilitate a workout. But I would be shocked if any of them flew out to see you and didn't facilitate a workout. Okay, that's just kind of how it works. In terms of a private high school scholarship, no, that's not going to affect your NCAA eligibility. But those scholarships are insanely hard to get, and you might have a tougher time bridging the gap from overseas to get that done than you think. And those high schools give tuition scholarships locally. They don't do anything about housing and all that kind of stuff and meals. So that's a whole nother hurdle, but it's certainly worth trying.
Thank you, sir. And Andre Louis Verroot and Ashley asks, are there age limitations in terms of college eligibility?
Yes, there are. I don't remember those off the top of my head anymore. And so it depends on why you're, when I'm looking at in the chat box, why you're 23 years old. If you, for instance, if you did a religious mission, you can have a special privilege to be able to play. But generally speaking, your clock starts at a certain age, and I apologize for not knowing that, guys. I really do, off the top. But it is on the NCAA website. But yeah, basically your eligibility is definitely going to be dipped into at that point, unless you have some reason why, if you served in a war, if you served a religious mission.
Great. Thank you, sir. Okay, any other questions, comments, statements, queries? Christoph, you're up, sir.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much. Well, I'm working with specialists throughout Europe and already have a couple of guys in college. My question about the eligibility is every country in Europe pretty much has a different situation after high school. Some countries have a mandatory military stuff to do, and some high schools take 4 years, some high schools take 5 years. Does the NCAA have rules that really covers everything, or is it different for every situation?
So no, there's definitely going to be different situations. And working with the NCAA and working with those individual situations, you'll be able to translate them in. But another example, my player right now is taking online courses because he only needed 2 more, so he's going to graduate early. So he's going to be enrolling. He's going to University of Georgia. He's going to be enrolling in January. So this is his last semester. So there are ways from your end to take things that satisfy the NCAA requirement to kind of navigate that and get in early from an academic standpoint. And I can't say what that is because, like you said, every country is different, and we just have to navigate that on an individual basis. In terms of if you have to do mandatory service or something like that, no, that's going to go into the exclusion where it's not going to be an issue. Colleges, when a college will recruit someone who's a Mormon who's going to go on a mission, they look at that and they're really, it completely throws all of their recruiting off because they're recruiting somebody now for somebody they can't have for a few years down the road. Well, coaches change so much that might not, they might not come. So it is going to be something that's going to impact the way that they're evaluated. Are they okay with somebody taking a year off in terms of military service? Are they willing to wait an extra year for somebody? those are things that you're going to have to conquer on an individual basis. But in terms of eligibility, that's not going to affect it. You would just have to process that, that data to the NCAA in that eligibility center, and you would be, cleared, no problem. Does that answer your question in full?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, good.
And one other thing, if I can ask real quick, is all the European kids are playing American football. So the eligibility, or every game they play in Europe here, is pretty much counting against eligibility if they play adult football. What about all the Australians? They are kicking, they are playing rugby, and they can play professional football, professional rugby, and it does not count. Now, for example, some of my partners have to, who are 17, 18 years old, have to compete against a 35-year-old Australian who already played professional sports, and they compete for the same spot.
Yeah,
do you see any changes there?
Yeah, so playing a different sport, there's a few kids, who come through the system who will play professional baseball in the United States, but then come back and play scholarship football. It's about the sport you play. And they're not considering that the level you're playing at there to be professional, that senior ball, but they're counting that as the clock starting and counting that as a year of eligibility. So that's the difference. So yeah, if you played cricket or soccer or something else professionally, that wouldn't count against you in terms of coming to play football. But playing that senior level, so if you play in a professional league where you actually got paid to play, you would be done and ineligible in football if it was football. But just playing, it's the issue that I brought up was that senior ball starting that clock and counting as a year of eligibility.
Okay.
And coach, just in that last comment that you just made, it's important to perhaps to remind everybody that for NCAA standards, I believe that certain leagues in Europe, most of them are considered semi-professional, and because of the lack of policing on who gets paid and who doesn't get paid, right? Some players may automatically be classified as professional football players if you play in this, even if you don't get paid. And then that may impact your eligibility, as you said.
Yes, exactly. And I tried to cover that. I'm glad you brought that up. I tried to cover that in saying if they perceive anything as a benefit because you play. So if you play on a team and you get free meals at a restaurant, they could perceive that as you're being paid to play, or you're endorsed and receiving benefits and you're ineligible.
Sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Coach.
Great. Thank you, sir. Steve Rains.
Uh-oh.
Mr. Rains, you're up, sir. Okay.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me
worries.
now?
Yeah, yes, sir.
I'd muted and forgotten I'd muted on the cable. Yeah, it's touching on the subject that's just, funnily enough, been discussed, because you touched on the NCAA eligibility hang-up over playing adult or senior football. And I think, it's been expanded on, but, the British American Football League is purely amateur by rule, but even that has not convinced the NCAA that adult football is not counted against eligibility. Have you got a view on that, Richie?
Yeah, the NCAA really is it's a funny governing body. They don't do things fairly. When they rule, they typically rule on being harsher and more stringent than anything else. And so all of the rules, they have a contact center that you can get in touch with and ask these questions in advance. And I highly recommend that you do everything proactively in advance, but they're just a funny breed, and they really are difficult, and they want to uphold that. But keeping that all in mind, guys, right now, as things are changing, we're in a very interesting climate with endorsements and things, and this all could change. But, if I had any concern, I would reach out to the NCAA, contact somebody, have it in writing with what they say before you do anything. Don't interpret a rule yourself. Have it in writing before you do anything, and make sure. That would be my recommendation.
I think that's really the key, isn't it? You got to plan ahead for a decision that they might possibly make, And the one thing I would say is, having been through the experience with one of my players, and you helped him, as you said earlier, get to JUCO, the NCAA thing still came back and haunted him when he came out of JUCO into TCU. It was still that eligibility over his involvement in British American football. So, it's really important that if you've got a kid playing youth junior football that is going to possibly be able to make it in college football, that you don't step over those lines and use the NCAA eligibility center, because they will help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
I see a question about
sorry.
9-a-side and 11 versus 11. So listen, it's really important just to control what you can control. If you, the best you can do is 9-a-side, that's what you got to work with, go for it. There's sides over here that play 9-man, 7-man football, and kids still get recruited from that. It is going to convolute things a little bit, but it's not anything that you can't overcome. And just do everything the same way as if it's an 11 on 11. And if that's what you have to work with, don't worry about it. All right, roll with it to the best of your ability.
Great, thank you, sir. Tom Chambers, you're up, sir.
Thank you. I have a question. So with the recruiting, making the phone calls, if you were to phone, who would be the best person to call or the most likely to pick up the phone?
Yeah, so it's really, every college program does things differently. The times that they're in the office, the times that they practice, times they have meetings, times that they're doing stuff. So what I recommend is kind of a scattered approach. And, when you look at it, there's going to be a director of on-campus recruiting. There's going to be a position coach. There's going to be a coordinator. And I would focus more on those. I would try everyone, because you never know who you might get. Okay, but I would try those. And a lot of times when you're going to call into these, there's there'll be an administrative assistant or a secretary who's going to answer that phone first, and who you can tell them who you are and that you're a recruit in this position, and they can forward you to the right person. And, you can try there a few times. And if you're not getting an answer, then call and specifically ask for, someone else, and just keep trying till you get through and you hear that they've evaluated you. That's the most important. But yeah, it's different. It's different with every program. The time that you call, I could sit here and tell you if you're a quarterback coach is the right guy, but unless you call at the exact right time, you're never going to get through to him and answer, and he won't call you back. So you just got to keep at it, mix up what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Saber Linky.
Hey, Coach. I've heard that the TOEFL test is the most important test for a German player for the path into the college. Is that right, or is just something?
I'm not entirely familiar with what is the TOEFL test.
It's a test of native English speaking.
Oh, so, yeah. In native English speaking test is, from a coaching standpoint, they're just going to be able to communicate you and see if you can talk football.
Yep.
Right. That's what they're going to be worried about. But yeah, you are going to have, as an international student, that is going to be something that's going to apply for you. And that's, I think, another route would be going the international baccalaureate way and going through the English side of it. But yeah, I'm not going to say it's the most important test, but yeah, you're going to have to show enough proficiency. So if you're getting recruited as an athlete and the coaches like your ability to speak English, they're going to be able to work on that standard because they know that, if that makes sense. But yeah,
thanks, Coach.
It's definitely important.
But Coach, just another comment in there. But it would be right to say that in this case, the potential student athlete will have to prove, if he's not a native English speaker, he'll have to prove to the university that he has the right level of English for him to be successful academically. Correct?
Absolutely. Yep, that's definitely part of it.
Regardless of whether the coaches believe he has enough.
Correct.
Football English knowledge.
Yeah, correct. The point I'm trying to bring up is that, if you're at a school that is a great academic school that you need a 4.0, coaches can help a student with a 3.25 get in, even though they're under the main, because they can work with them and they have some. So the TOEFL, you might not have to get 100% the exact same that just a student would. Okay, but yeah, absolutely is going to be a part of it. Absolutely, Coach.
Thank you, sir. John, You're up, sir. John's iPhone. The gentleman who raised his hand. Oh.
Don't know how to do it.
How you doing,
Hello.
sir? Good. We can hear you.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how this all worked, so I'm here now.
It's all good. Thanks for being here. You good? You have a question, sir?
I do. Is there a kind of camp where in the US where you could go for an under 17 player and try to get you noticed and how you register for it?
You mean like a camp where you're actually doing football work?
Yeah, a camp where I could take my kid and show what he can do rather than just, all these kind of stats and various,
Yeah, so, the combines that I spoke about are there's going to be a small period where you're doing football and you're going to be noticed, but the main thing that really drives those is your data, your height, your weight, your 40 times, your bench, all those kind of things, right? Now those, I could help you, find one in your time frame, that's regional, that's going to get it out there. In terms of finding a camp that gets you out there, the sad thing is that those are really based off the school. There's a couple lower level programs that'll come together to run a camp where there might be 10 or 12 colleges at the lower levels that are going to be exposed to those. But in terms of, if you want to look at by Clemson or Notre Dame or something, all you have to do is go to their websites and find those. In terms of the regional combines, I can, you can, I mean, in the States, it's easy just to Google search football combines for high school students, and they'll all come up. And I can help make sure that you can reach out to me, help make sure you pick a good one out. Does that, I mean, I know that doesn't answer exactly what you're looking for, but unfortunately that doesn't exactly exist,
No, I was just one more concerned if there was high level sort of combines, like say Clemson, etc., that you could take your kid along to and he could show what he can do in front of American kids.
Yeah, and you can go to any of those. You can just look up those at any of the colleges that you like, or any college that you'd be interested in. But just keep in mind that you're only going to get evaluated by that one school.
Yeah, but when would they take place? In 2021.
So those are typically you're looking at potentially April, May, and June. Definitely May and June timeframe.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Coach.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's go with we have. Let me just quickly see. Okay, Andre Louis Verrucci asks, if you played for 3 years in the United Kingdom and you want to play back in the States, do you still have about 1 or 2 years of eligibility left, or would your eligibility be eradicated altogether after having played 3 years at university, I presume?
Yeah, and it's just going to come down to what the NCAA quantifies your level at. If they're considering that level to be college equivalent and then your clock started, then yeah, you would basically have 1 year of eligibility left and you're not going to be able to play anywhere. There's not going to be, I mean, maybe an NAIA or a Division 3 or 2 would be interested in you for a year. But that's, you probably wouldn't get any scholarship help, but if you're willing to pay for school on your own, they might take you for a year. Absolutely. JUCOs would be out of the question because that's your first 2 years. But if they don't quantify that as burning that eligibility, then your clock would be at 0. And I, unfortunately, just saying what you said, I can't speak to that. It's something that you'd have to work through with the NCAA and your exact circumstance.
Great, thank you very much. All right, let's go with the last 2 questions. So let's start off with Will Snoon. You're raising your hand, sir.
Yes, I had a question. What's the best way to get accurate stats and film if my school doesn't offer it?
So in terms of getting the stats, you're just going to have to find somebody, a buddy, a coach, a parent who can help you with this. You can just get any old stopwatch and help, understand how the different, drills are timed. Any old measuring tape to measure it. And just make sure, you can watch YouTube to see how the things are and have somebody else help you to set up the drills and time you, and do those things. Again, hopefully in the future we can solve that issue for you guys and have a combine over that you guys can come to. But really, hopefully, we can start a trend with coaches over there who start having this as part of the package and part of helping those U19 teams. And then in terms of film, it's kind of the same. If your teams aren't doing it and there's no way they can, you just got to find somebody who can. Find a buddy, find a parent, a girlfriend, find whoever you need to try to film and get as much as you can. Because if you don't have any film and any data, there's no chance of being recruited, obviously,
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. And that'll leave us with the final question of the evening, Grace Imran. Grace Imran, you good?
Yeah.
How you doing?
I don't know.
You're breaking off, sir. I think you're breaking off a little bit. You can type your question and I can just ask it on your behalf if you want. Okay. Well, in the meantime, any other last minute questions, gentlemen? Any other statements, queries?
I have one last question. Is it allowed for a coach to come to Europe and really recruit?
They absolutely can. The hurdles, so there's two hurdles. Most big time schools aren't going to care about the budget. They're going to have plenty and it's not going to matter. The issue for most though is that it takes such a time commitment to hop on a plane and get out there, and they have such small windows that it's not going to be easy to get someone out there. There either has to be several kids that they can go see at once, or it's got to be a really special kid for them to actually do that. Because a lot of times when they do this, literally, like, they fly in to see me. They make an appointment with me. They land, the night before. They stay in a hotel. They land at midnight the night before. They stay in a hotel. They're seeing me at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. We spend a half hour together. They see the kid for 5 minutes, and then they're off to go see the next recruit and seeing another one. So there's no reason they can't come. A few places would be budget restricted, like especially at the lower levels. But it's just going to come down to whether or not they could fit it in and how important the recruit is.
All right, thanks.
All right. Well, I guess that's all for tonight then. Coach Wessman, thanks a million for once again taking your time to enlighten us with the whole recruitment process. I got to be honest with you, Coach. Like, for me, this is my my Friday night entertainment. You got folks out there chasing PlayStation 5s. You got people out there watching Netflix. I'd rather listen to college recruitment. So thanks for giving me the pleasure to listen to that. It was very interesting. So thanks a lot, Coach. Much appreciated.
It was a lot of fun, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity. And definitely, if anyone has questions or I can help in any way, please let me know.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Coach Rick, any final words, sir? Mr. Coach Rick?
You're muted, Rick.
You're mute, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can indeed.
Right. Okay. So I just wanted to thank everybody for investing their time, coming on board, share the knowledge and hope through football. When we put this whole thing together where Coach was going to speak, the reason behind it was to give as much knowledge and information as we can to our coaches and athletes. So there's not any false information out there. And there's still going to be a lot of work to do with this, but we've taken the first steps. The takeaways for me are, for especially you young guys who are looking to forward your career, is remember what Coach said about social media, all right? And remember what he said about your friends. Sometimes you've got to shed your skin and there's going to be some casualties, some people you've known for a long time. but they don't figure in your future plans because of their behaviors. So think about what you want and think about what they do, okay? So I think that's important. The other thing that resonated on me was that 1.6 million kids for 1,690 places in the NFL. So you've got to think about that competition and how seriously you want to take that, because that's, you work the percentages out and that's a small percentage. So that was important. For the coaches, I want us to remember, although this was about how to go and play in the States, for our program, our standards we've got to learn from this conversation today what our standards are going to be. If we improve our standards, we improve our kids. Our kids then have measurables that they can stack up, which will help them realize their dreams. So I'm hoping that you've looked into what was being said today and worked out how you can implement some of this stuff here. There was another thing that came up, right, which was about coaches going to the States. If it wasn't for the COVID thing, we had 4 places through Share the Knowledge. We had 4 places for colleges, for coaches to visit spring practices, which would have been a week-long gig. And we're still working on that. So if you drop me a line, we will always stay in touch. And as soon as we can sort that out, the hope is that we're going to do that. I'm working with not just Coach Woodson and Sebastian from Europe, but with Coach Wessman. There are other coaches and colleges that we're working with, because it's good experience to expose you in that way. Second to last thing is, the next clinic is going to be a football linebacker. So all you guys who are interested in linebackers, that's going to happen, I believe, on the 11th of December, which will be a Friday night. And we'll start getting that information out to you on Monday. So again, we'll spread that word and get it out there. And lastly, what I'd like to say is, probably one of the best things Steve Rains has ever done, Coach Steve Rains, has introduced me to Coach Richie Wessman. Is a really good presenter, very knowledgeable. We're going to get him back on to do positional stuff and so on. And Coach, I really appreciate, I mean, me and you have spent some time talking and stuff, and as people get to know you, they'll understand the value you bring to the stuff that we want to do. So thank you for taking time out. You volunteered to do it on Thanksgiving, which was yesterday, and I wouldn't have lived with that. So thank you for coming on the next day, and we're going to carry on working together. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Great,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, coaches.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you.
coaches. That was great. Thanks.